Speaking of putting a cap on spending, Levy and Tottenham are said to have been in favor of a more restrictive PSR system, one of the few clubs that feel that way, when it will be tabled at the Premier League's meetings next summer. Why are they in favor of this?
Well, as I just said, I mean, when the NFL clubs found that they had a fixed sort of cost and they knew what their costs were going to be for a year, then the valuation went through the roof. That's what investors like. I think Daniel Levy at Spurs is one of the best financial operators, as we all know, and certainly I can see his view is that he wants to keep the league competitive around his level, and he's not there yet in terms of the big six. So he knows as well that the valuation of his franchise, Spurs, I hate to call it a franchise, but that's how we have to think about it, will actually be increased if he can find some way to keep these spending rules, in place. He wants it to be restrictive, but he wants it to be enforced. There's going to be political views between all 20 clubs, and they're all going to be in different places about this. I was surprised that some action hasn't already moved forward on some of the votes that happened in the summer, but I think we will start to see clubs moving towards a more open PSR situation, despite what Daniel wants. So we're going to have to see the debates as they go forward, but it's urgent, and it's got to happen right now.
And if the PSR rules are a little bit more open, does that hurt a club like Tottenham and Levy, who are so strict in the way that they handle their finances, so strict in the way that they hand out contracts and the way that they do deals?
Yeah, I think it would do. I think, as I say, that the owners of that type would want stricter rules, and then that allows, in theory, for more competition. But I think you're going to find other owners still be able to get enough votes somehow to be able to keep it reasonably open, because they didn't vote for it already. It couldn't get through the 20 votes, couldn't get to 14 votes. And so there seems to be a feeling that clubs want to leave themselves there, because what they're thinking as well is, okay, if I'm going to sell my club, I want to leave the new owner with as much opportunity as possible to maximise the opportunity. And that's what they're thinking, and that's why they don't necessarily want to close it down right now. But we'll see. It's a big debate, but it's probably the most crucial factor in the Premier League right now, as we sit here today, is solving these PSR rules. And sustainability, as we're seeing, is not being maintained through these rules. But it's how do we, stop the massive inflation that is going on in football in the Premier League in terms of player wages, player salaries, player transfer fees, etc. We've got to find a way to try and bring some logic and reason into this whole situation, because it's just going down in a spiral of legal fees as well as everything else. So we've got to find a way through it.
For sure. And Daniel Levy wants Tottenham Hotspur Stadium to host the Champions League final in 2027. What kind of financial boost might that bring to Tottenham?
I was trying to estimate how much that might make for Spurs. I think it might be something around between 5 and 6 sort of million mark, which is very good for a night's work. Potentially more, depending on what other fingers he has in pies around the stadium. But that's where I think the sort of the fees would be in terms of potential share of revenue as well. UEFA are very hungry, and when they come to splitting the revenue created around the Champions League. But I think, for one night's work, that's not a bad sort of number to try and pick up. But that's my guess as to where it would be.
For sure. And then we've spoken a lot about Tottenham potentially selling a minority stakehold for around £750 million. Could we see Levy and Spurs enter a multi-club model by using that cash to potentially buy another club?
I don't think that's where the money would go initially. I think they may use part of that to pay down some of the debt still on the stadium. I think they'd like to try and do that still and reduce the interest payments if they can. Spurs would be very easy to become a halo club for a multi-club organisation. They've got great networks throughout the world in terms of the sporting side, and they're very well thought of. It wouldn't be hard for them to do that, but I know that they would build one that would make sense rather than having the clashes that some of the multi-club owners do. So I don't know if they want to do it informally or formally. It's something I'm sure they'll look at. It's probably one of the last areas that Daniel can actually build greater value with Spurs. Now he's got the stadium. He's got one of the biggest assets there. He's got a great training ground, which I know I helped advise them on. So it's difficult now to see where they're going to go. So multi-club could be one area of new revenue to build the club even more. I know that the valuations of Spurs we've always thought have been very high. They've hired Rothschilds as advisors for many years now to try and advise them on valuations and potential buyers. But I do think any money coming in from minority stake, I think the vast majority of it would go towards paying down that debt, is my thoughts right now.